Now we are live and we are recording. So listen, for those of you that are watching the video replay, please do not forget to subscribe and like. All right. And if you have any questions or notes, please make sure, or questions or comments, please make sure to leave it down below in the comment section. All right, so let me share my slides because we're going to get straight into it, because today we're going to be talking about the 7 secrets that you need to know in order to build a battle-ready speaking business. And this is part 1. On the very next Tuesday, which is in 2 weeks, we're going to go ahead and we're going to cover part 2. Let me go ahead and share my slides with you and make sure you can see it. Now, normally when you're doing a presentation, you would share a PowerPoint, but the internet has been acting really quite glitchy. So the way that I save them today is on a PDF. That way I don't have to depend on PowerPoint. Now, normally when I build my PowerPoint deck, or someone on my team does, we use Canva. Everyone familiar with Canva? I'm going to give you guys pro notes like this as we go along, because you guys are starting at different levels. Some of you, like Whitney and Aunt D, you've been in business for a while and you've had your platforms going. But some of you may say, hey, listen, I just started out and I'm not even aware of the different systems that I can use. So if somebody will put the link to Canva inside of the chat, Canva, Canva. Canva does have a free account and they also have a professional account. I advise you to invest in your business and get the pro account. It is absolutely worth it. Even that waiting room video that you guys saw the video, Canva, built on Canva, my loves. All right. Yeah, Whitney, Canva. And so you can actually go to YouTube and you can get more information about how to build that out. So again, I will stop every once in a while and give you pro tips like that. So we're going to go over 7 secrets. And actually today you're going to get 4 of the 7 secrets, not all 7, but you're just going to get 4, which is plenty to work with, because I do not want to fire hose you. Without further ado, let me go ahead and share my screen. And again, we're going to be going from Nehemiah, talking about the 7 secrets to building a battle-ready speaking business. Okay, so why speak? First of all, let me just say that you are all called to speak. You are kingdom ambassadors. Now I'm going to stop this for a second because I want to share this. Zoom has a new feature. When you share your slides, it'll show just your slide. But I want you to be able to see me and my facial expressions as well. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to reshare it. And I'm going to share it where you can also see. I'm just going to show you what it can do. Again, these are little pro tips I'm going to throw in. So you can see how I shared the different screen. You can see here how there's a version where I can share it this way, right? And you kind of see the whole entire screen. You see all my stuff in the backdrop, right? You could absolutely share your screen that way. You can also go in and you can share it this way. And when you share it this way, again, you see them down here at the lower left or right, depending on how your screen is set up. So you very well may want to use a trick like that when you're doing your presentations. And then also I'm going to, of course, land on the one that I actually want to use, which is to share it. No, not this way. That's not the one I wanted to use. Zoom. Zoom is constantly changing stuff. That's absolutely fine. Okay, I'm just going to keep it this way. Keep it simple. Now you don't even want to, here you go. All right, there we go. This is how I want to share it. Great. All right, so why speak? One of the reasons why we speak is because we're kingdom ambassadors. I don't want you to think of yourself as motivational speakers at all. As a matter of fact, even though you're not going to get that secret today, one of the secrets is going to revolve around the fact that I don't want you, or I strongly encourage you not to advertise that you are motivational speakers, but I want you to think about advertising that you are an expert that speaks. That is a huge difference, right? But for the sake of this slide, you are not motivational speakers. I want you to think of yourself as kingdom ambassadors. As a kingdom ambassador, you are held to a much higher standard. Here I put the Great Commission here, Matthew 28:19-20, better known as the Great Commission. As a speaker, Everything that you do should spring from the Great Commission. So, for example, one of my sayings is, if God ain't in it, I ain't doing it. I'm just not doing it. I have to be able to be the person that God has called me to be on every platform. Now, the Great Commission says this: go, therefore. I love this. It starts off with action, y'all. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. And here is one of my favorite parts about it. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of age. I love that, because this right here, it doesn't say go and tell your children. That's not what it say, Queen. It don't say go and tell your neighbors. It don't just say go and just share at the church or just share in the marketplace. That is not what it says. It says go and make disciples of all nations. My loves, this is a global call. Global. And that is why I love the speaking platform, because speaking is one of the few ways that you can reach people globally. You can talk to people digitally. You can talk to them through Zoom, through Skype. Yes, people still use Skype. Through Skype, you can speak to different forums internationally. And so that is one of the reasons why I'm such a big proponent of speaking. So let me go to the next slide. But keep in mind, you are kingdom ambassadors. You're held to a higher standard. You can't do things like everybody else do things. So as a kingdom ambassador, that means no matter where you go, my loves, you're representing royalty. You are representing the king. So if you go somewhere and they say, hey, come on, let's go to this little nightclub. Okay, you're a kingdom ambassador. You can't do what everybody else is doing. Or even, I love this, if you get a heckler out in the audience, how would a kingdom ambassador who's held to a higher standard respond to that? Keep that in mind. You are a kingdom ambassador. Okay, let's get into Nehemiah. So this is a story of a man who is called to build. And it seems like he has the entire world against him as he's called to build. And many of you can identify with that. I'm called to build, but I got all these things stacked up against me. And then you're going to see later on that as he's called to build, he's locked into this war. But this is an unusual war. This is a war of words. And you're going to see that. And this is the same war. You're going to find a lot of similarities in Nehemiah's war, similar with the war that you are going to have to tackle as well. And so I thought that this story, Nehemiah, was very, very relevant to you guys and even myself in building our speaker focused business, because many of the trials and tribulations that Nehemiah is going to have to go through, you're going to have to go through as well. Now, what you will see is you will see God's favor throughout the story of Nehemiah. But you won't see miracles of healing the sick. You won't see miracles of the blind seeing. And so what I appreciate about that is that, wow, this makes Nehemiah's journey feel so familiar to my journey and familiar to your journey as well. Okay, so here is the issue. All right, so Nehemiah, he's a cupbearer, which means that he's responsible for tasting food and tasting wine before the king gets his serving. He is the first line of defense for the king. And so because he is right there in the king's court, that means that he clearly understands customs. He clearly understands courtesies. He knows how to navigate with the elite. He knows how to speak the language, right? He is a cupbearer. And on top of that, he has just received this report that the Jerusalem wall is still broken and down, and the gates are still destroyed by fire. Wait a minute, let me get this straight. First of all, the Jews were disobedient. So you know how Jews are. Jews are always doing, just like the Israelites, always doing something wrong, right? And so God said, okay, I'm going to fix y'all butt. So God allowed the Babylonian Empire to destroy the Jerusalem walls, and the Jews were exiled for 70 years. 70 years the Jews were exiled. Now that Nehemiah is receiving news about the gate, the Jews have been allowed back into the city for 90 years. You mean to tell me Jeremiah is receiving this report, and the first wave of Jews returned back to Jerusalem 90 years ago. And 90 years later, they are back and the wall is still down. And it convicted Nehemiah. I mean, it really convicted him. He is a cupbearer. He hasn't been home in a while in Jerusalem. He's way over here in Persia. But he feels convicted. He got this report. Some of you know what it feels like. You're here, but you feel convicted. Like, what's going on? Like, I just heard this bad news, and for some reason, I just can't function like I normally would. I should be able to. Look at me. I'm surrounded by luxury, but I just can't seem to get it together. But I want you to look at the first thing that Nehemiah does. The first thing that Nehemiah does is that he goes to God in prayer because he wants to be in the will of God. He knows that God must be a first response, not a last resort. I want you to keep that in mind. God should always be your first response, not your last resort. Because when you hear bad news of somebody burning down your version of a wall, something that's near and dear to your life, a lot of us, we want to what? We want to knuckle up. We want to fight. But no, your first response should be to give it to God. So here we see this beautiful prayer that Nehemiah is praying. And what I love about this is you can see that Nehemiah has a relationship with God, because he's reminding God of what he said. He's saying, Moses said this and you said that. And I'm repenting, God, because you said that if we repent, that you would give us another chance. Now here I am praying to you, God, a cupbearer to the king. And one of the things I also want you to remember about this is that, yes, he goes to God because he knows that no matter where he is in life, just like you, no matter where you are in life, the safest place you could ever be is inside the will of God. That's the safest place you can ever be. So he goes to God and he gets permission. And I want you to keep in mind that the Apostle Paul says to pray without ceasing. That means to continue to pray. Whenever you pray to God, it should feel like an unbroken dialogue. Whether you're praying in the morning, in the noon, at night, it should always feel like one consistent flow of conversation. Some people come to me and they say, yeah, Queen, I prayed over it, but I prayed casually. I want you to sit and think about this vision that God has laid on your lap. And I want you to ask yourself, is the thing that I'm praying for casually, does it only require casual power? Or does it require big power? One of the things that my pastor says that I absolutely love is that he says, much prayer, much power. Some prayer, some power. No prayer, no power. And I want you to keep that in mind. This is something that Nehemiah clearly understood. And when you pray, I want you to think of your prayer as this, because this leads to our secret number one. I want you to think of your prayer as like this pebble that you drop, this pebble of prayer into this ocean. And it starts these ripples and ripples, and the ripples goes on, and your prayers go on until it creates this tsunami of power. And so for your action, and I know it sounds so simple, but like I always say, things that are simple to do, things that are easy to do are also easy not to do. We have this one-on-one connection with God. That's one of the things that I love about being a Christian, about being a kingdom ambassador. It's not like Buddhist. I don't have to go to a statue. I don't have to don an object in order to connect to God. I can go straight to God. You can go straight to God. Start on your knees. Remember, the Apostle Paul says, pray without ceasing. So in other words, secret number one, get your covering. Get your covering. Make sure you are safe and protected and that you are in alignment with his will. All right. Keep in mind that you do not have the authority to speak for God until you speak to God. So let's go on. So Nehemiah 2, the second chapter of Nehemiah. So in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was before him, I took up the wine and I gave it to the king. Now I had not been sad in his presence. And the king said to me, why is your face sad? Seeing you are not sick, this is nothing but sadness of heart. See, the king had to know him. He had to have a close relationship with him to look at him and say, he ain't sick. This is something that's internal going on with him. And then right here in verse 2 still, it says, then I was much afraid. See, he was afraid. But he said to the king, you see, right here, you're about to see that he understands his audience. He not just going to just jump into his problems. He understands the authority in which he is speaking to. I want you to keep in mind your audience when you're speaking as well. First thing he says is, let the king live forever. But why should not my face be sad when the city, the place of my father's graves, lies in ruins and its gates have been destroyed by fire? Then the king said to me, what are you requesting? Oh, listen, first time I read this, I couldn't contain myself. Can you imagine? Opportunity is it's rarely convenient. And opportunity is rarely comfortable. But can you imagine the right person sitting in front of you who can supply your needs, saying, hey, listen, I know that I'm a person of high position, high resources, and I am connected, and I see something is going on with you. Let me stop all of my big official affairs to see what's going on with you and ask you, what do you need? What do you need? And the other thing I want to point out is that, why is your face sad? You see, he was afraid because in the king's court, it was considered disrespectful to look sad around the king because the king is this big, magnificent person. And so just by virtue of being around the king, you're supposed to be happy you're around the king. And so looking sad around the king, oh no, it very much could have been off with his head. So let's put it that way. But he said to the king, understanding his audience, long live the king, he stated what his problem was. How many of you would have been like, oh, I'm good, I'm great? Now, I get you saying it to some people, but when you got somebody in front of you that can help you, no, listen, this is what's wrong. You guys have heard me say it before. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. Asking for help is a sign that you refuse to give up. So the king says, what are you requesting here in verse 4? And I love what he does next. So I prayed to the God of heaven. I love this because it doesn't take 30 minutes to say a prayer. 2 seconds. You can pray to God just like that. He put God first. You see? Seek first the kingdom and righteousness, and everything else will be given to you. So I prayed to the God of heaven, and I said to the king, if it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in your sight, then you send me to Judah. Judah is a tribe, right? And Jerusalem is in Judah. Send me to Judah, to the city of my father's graves, that I may rebuild it. I love this. This is a cupbearer. The Bible doesn't articulate that he has a background in construction. I want you to keep that in mind when you're building your speaking business. You may say, I'm a hairstylist. I don't have a background in speaking. I'm a teacher. I don't have a background in speaking to large audiences like that, unless they're little kids. I'm a stylist. a fashion stylist. I don't have a background in speaking. But he said, hey, I want to go rebuild this. I feel this conviction. And the king said to me, the queen sitting beside him, how long will you be gone? And when will you return? The king is saying, tell me when you coming back. When you talk about favor, that's why I say you don't see miracles in here, but you see favor left and right. So it pleased the king to send me when I had given him a time. And I said to the king, if it pleases the king, let letters be given me to the governors of the province beyond the river, and that they may let me pass through until I come to Judah, and a letter to Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, that he may give me timber to make beams for the gates. And he just collects all these letters, and the king granted him what he asked for. Now, I want you to think about what you need to ask for. What do you need? Asking you shall receive, because some of you are not receiving because you're not asking. And some of you are receiving, but you ain't asking big enough. This was a big ask to ask the king. Here is secret number 2. Listen, when you're building your speaker business, don't just say, hey, can you put me on your platform? I want you to think about all the resources that person can connect you to, and I want you to ask for it. And in the meantime, while you are building your speaking business, I want you to work in the background. There are a lot of things you can do right now that don't require money. You can go to google.com and Google Docs.com, and you can start working on your documents and your contracts. Speaking fees. Now, there has never been a time where a church has asked me to speak and I sent them a speaker's fee. I've never charged a church whatsoever, but that's one of my values. I don't do that. And if they have forced money on me, I will circulate it right back into the cause. Now, some of you may say, well, what about, when you speak for churches and things like that? Usually churches will give you something called an honorarium. And it's different from city to city and state to state. Now, some cities will say something like, okay, if you are a minister, we'll give you $150 or $200 as an honorarium to cover your gas, and they want to pay for your meal and things like that. Usually they'll give you that honorarium. If you are a pastor, they may give you like a $300 honorarium. If you are a bishop, they may give you like a $400 honorarium. It differs from city to city. And then also depending on if it's a small church, a mid-sized church, or a mega church. All right. Now, if you're speaking for corporate or let's say for a school, a lot of times you can ask them, hey, what's in your budget? You can ask them how much did they have set aside for speaking? And it could range anywhere sometimes from $750 to $5,000. Or you may have your own set fees. Now you may say, okay, for me to speak at this school, you may tell them, well, listen, my speaker's fee is $1,500. $1,500 is a really good place to start for a speaker's fee. If you're not comfortable with that, not a lot of people are comfortable doing that, then here's what I recommend. If you're not comfortable starting at $1,500, start at $750. $750. And once you get paid at least 3 times, $750, add another $750 because now you have some experience up under your belt. So now add another $750 to it. So now your speaker's fee is about $1,500. Now, some of you might say, I'm not comfortable charging $5,000 for a speaking gig, for a school or corporate or something like that. I'm not comfortable doing that. Then that's absolutely fine. But let me tell you how you can get comfortable doing that. If somebody says, hey, listen, like corporate, because like if you go to corporate and you say my speaker's fee is $750, they may not hire you because they might say this person is cheap. They probably don't know how to deliver, and they may not, it'll make them uncomfortable because a lot of times we associate free with cheap, or cheap with, low budget, not good, defective. So here's what I recommend. Go ahead and build a package for $5,000. Just imagine speaking once a month and getting paid 5K. Like, what would that do for your bottom line in this speaking industry, for the economy of your house? Like, on top of what you're making with your side hustle, and you got 5K once a month for the same speech that the same speech. That would probably like really like blow your mind, especially blow your bank account. And here's what I recommend. So let's say, because remember I said before, I recommend that you advertise yourself as an expert that speaks, not a motivational speaker. And what I mean by that is, if you're an expert in, say, an expert in helping adults who are caught at work with drugs and alcohol to recover and get back into the workforce, that could be an expertise. That is your expertise. And you speak about that expertise. You're drawing from that expertise. Now, you may say, I'm not comfortable charging 5K for that. If you took 2K out of the 5K that you're going to be paid, and you took 2K and you say, I'm going to hire a coach or a mentor or a specialist, someone who specializes in neuroscience, for an example, neuroscience, and who can train me on how neuroscience is applicable to alcohol and drug addiction and things like that. And they pour all of this great information into you. So you, in essence, created your own education program with the 2K and you pocket the 3K. You would show up to your presentation with confidence because you've had all these different experts to pour into you. Toni Morrison had a really great quote. She said, there's a book out there that you want to read and it doesn't exist, write it. If there's a curriculum out there that you know you need for the calling that God is pulling you towards, and it doesn't exist for what it is that you want to do, create it. In that same aspect, create it. There are all kind of experts out there that you can sew together to create this Frankenstein of a curriculum to pour into yourself. Now, you may be saying, well, listen, Coach Queen, that one speech, I'm going to get tired of saying this one speech over and over and over again. You might, but you probably won't. You'll get really, really comfortable. I want you to think of it this way. I want you to think of your favorite, one of your favorite singers. I love Patti LaBelle. I love me some Patti LaBelle. I love me some Whitney Houston, right? But imagine Patti LaBelle and Whitney Houston going on tour. They sung the same songs in Houston that they sung in Atlanta, that they sung in Washington, D.C., that they sung in Miami. They can't say, well, listen, I sung If Only You Knew How Much I Do Love You in Atlanta. I'm not singing it in New York because I already sung it. The folks in New York ain't heard it. They ain't heard it, right? So it is the same thing for your speech. I want you to work on creating one powerful talk. And I want you to create the documents and the contracts and the speaker fees, all that stuff that goes with it. So when your opportunity, because you saw Nehemiah, he had his documents together. Hey, King, I need documents so I can get here and there. I need you to get your documents together as well, to include working on your speech, your talk. All right, let me keep going. Well, it's one thing I want to say. I got it in my notes here to say it. One of the things that I absolutely love about this story is that he's a cupbearer and he is working. He feels compelled to go back to Judah, to Jerusalem, to rebuild the wall. And what I love about that is, one, he doesn't let the fact that he's a cupbearer stop him. He doesn't let thoughts like, oh my goodness, I'm going to go back home. They probably going to look at me like I don't belong. I've been living out over here in the kingdom, in the palace forever. He didn't let that stuff detour him. That's one thing I loved about him. But the other thing that I loved about him is that he clearly had a relationship with the king. And the reason why I say that is because he was positioned for favor and he was dignified. Clearly, he was dignified in the things that he do. I met some kingdom ambassadors who say, well, I work at Wendy's. And so, yeah, I bring cups. You go to their house, you see Wendy's straws, Wendy's cups. They're taking stuff from their place of employment. They treat people like crap. They show up late, always late. Always got to call them. Hey, why aren't you at work? Listen, no matter where you are a kingdom ambassador. I remember when I was in high school and the janitor there who I would talk to all the time, he was hired to be a janitor, but I knew that I could always go to him for guidance and for wisdom. He was a kingdom ambassador. It didn't matter what he was doing. I need for you to act dignified in the jobs that you're doing right now, regardless if you want to be there or not. Because above it all, you are still a kingdom ambassador. I remember that movie. So how many of you saw that movie, The Butler, with Forrest Whitaker in it? The Butler. And it was this one part in the movie, and I haven't seen it in a while, but it was this one part in the movie where they were kind of looking down on the butlers. They was like, you guys are, Uncle Tom's over there working in the White House for those uppity people, looking at them really bad. And it came to a scene where it said, the butlers, they were fighting mindsets. They were fighting this war in their own way by giving the elite people, by giving these powerful people an example of what a dignified, ethical Black person looks like. And so I want you to keep that in mind, because even once you leave the job that you are positioned in right now and you go and do something else and you say, hey, come to me for prayer, people are going to be like, I remember when you wouldn't even come to work on time. I remember seeing you take the cups and put them in the back of your car. See, you are destroying your witness, right? When you post certain things on Facebook, I want you to be cognizant. Ask yourself, am I destroying my witness? The way you're acting at work, are you destroying your witness? Okay, so let me keep going here. All right, so here we are at these walls. Still, okay, yes. So here he goes to inspect the Jerusalem walls, right? And keep in mind, this is important because if a city didn't have walls back in those days, a city was vulnerable. And that means when you walked around, you didn't have peace of mind because you didn't know at any time somebody could go break in your house. Somebody could come and take your children. You were vulnerable to attack. A wall was how you protected a city. You couldn't even, Ezra was just there and he just helped build a temple. The temple they couldn't even put nice things in the temple because the city didn't have any walls. Somebody might come in and steal from the temple. And so they needed this wall. And so here we go. Nehemiah is here. He's been here for about 3 days. We're going to skip this part right here because we're going to talk about this next session because I can't wait to talk about the enemies right here in verse 10. But you see, I want you to see what he did first. Here in verse 11, he was there 3 days. And at night, while everybody else was sleeping, like some of you guys are doing, some of you at night, you're working on your business. You're working on your pre-nurturing email sequences. You're working on all these different things at night while everybody's sleeping. So at night, he arose and he took a few men with me. You see, he traveled light and he kept his circle tight. And he told no one what his God had put into his heart. So he went out and he inspected the walls. I'm going to skip down here to 14. Then I went on to the fountain gate into the king's pools, but there was no room for the animal that was under me to pass. So then he went by night for the valley and he inspected the wall. And I turned back and entered by the valley gate and so returned. And the officials did not know where I had gone or what I was doing. And I had not yet told the Jews, the priests, the nobles, the officials, and the rest were to do the work. He told nobody what's going on. And so then eventually what he's going to do is he's going to gather everyone together. See, first he went out and he inspected. He didn't just go and just get a hammer and start hammering things together. That's not what he did. For many of you right now, you are in a season of preparation as well. This is his season of preparation, his season of inspection, an opportunity to go and say, before I just jump into this thing that I believe I'm called to do, let me get the full scope of what the problem it looks like. I want you to think about what God is calling you to build. If you are a child of God, God is calling you to build something, my loves. He might be calling you to build something from your house, from a business, from a position of advocacy, from ministry. What is it that God is calling you to build? Because once you start on your knees, once you get covered by God, I need for you to figure out what it is you need to ask for from God, from the right people as well. And then also, I need for you to fully inspect the problem to figure out what's going on. Start learning the language of your next level. I remember when I was a sexual assault response coordinator for the Army, or SARC for short. And I remember I was in a room with another victim advocate, someone who helped victims to heal from sexual harassment and sexual assault. And this victim advocate, who had a great heart, who wanted to help, she kept calling this lady a survivor. She was like, well, you're a survivor now. You did this and this happened. And she was really trying to pump the lady up and inspire the lady. And the lady got upset. And the lady said, who are you to call me a survivor? I determine when I'm a survivor. And I know you and I are probably thinking that something like that is small. But in that world, that piece of information was gold. To be careful about placing label on things. I remember when I was doing some work for another consulting company, and they were Caucasian, and they would use the word tribe. And their business grew into $1 million business, and they kept using the word tribe. Hey, welcome to my tribe. And there were a lot of Native Americans who were sending emails upset because they used the one word tribe. And so we went into a meeting and we talked about it. And me, of course, being African American, I said, you got a few choices here, right? I said, you can continue using the word tribe, and there's a way to own it. You absolutely can. Or you can stop using it because you understand that it may cost you more in the long run, because this is a word that's near and dear to certain indigenous people. Those are your choices. At the end of the day, they made their choice, but they were learning the level of their next level. They were understanding all of the problems that was coming along with the calling that they had. And I love that Nehemiah starts coming in early with a light load in a tight circle of people, not telling everybody what he's doing and saying, hey, listen, let me figure out the full scope of this problem. He even got a glimpse of his enemies. Now, as far as strategy for your business, one of the things that you could do is called a SWOT report. Let me stop this for a second and put this in the chat. A SWOT report. Raise your hand if you ever heard of a SWOT, SWOT report. Okay, great, Whitney, great. Some of you have. All right. So a SWOT report stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and thank you, Whitney. You put it in the chat for me. SWOT stands for strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threat. Listen, get a strategy behind your decisions. Don't just go off feelings. Don't just go up to your version of the wall and say, oh, I feel like if we start right here, we can just have the wall finished in a year. No, you need to do a SWOT report. Strengths. What are all of your strengths? Some of you might say, my strength is that I'm not afraid to speak in front of small rooms, small crowds. That's a strength. My strength is that I feel like I'm called to do this. My strength is that I feel like God is backing me. Those are your strengths. But what are your weaknesses? And then when you write down your weaknesses, we need to figure out how to turn it into a strength. Your weakness might be, well, I need to get the spotlight on my business because nobody's ever heard of me. I'm the best kept secret. That would be a weakness. Nobody's ever heard of me. I have no clients. I don't have anybody on my email list. By the way, you need an email list to be a speaker. I don't have an email list. So that would be a weakness. You're nobody on your email list, less than 5 people on your email list. Now, how do we turn that into a strength? You hire somebody to do that. You may decide to take a marketing class, right? We turn that into a strength. Even your strengths that you have, when you write it out, figure out a way to turn it into an even stronger strength. So we got strengths, we got weaknesses. Now we got opportunities. I want you to think about all the opportunities at your disposal. Yeah, it is, Vivian. It's a great tool. All the opportunities at your disposal. Many of you have heard the story about when I went to my plastic surgeon, Dr. Ann Lee. I would go to her to get the Botox injections because I'm a student and I'm in seminary school and I have businesses and I'm a mom and all this stuff. So I get bags up under my eyes. And I go to Dr. Ann Lee and she shoots something in my face right there and I'm gone. Right? I'm just full disclosure. I get Botox like twice a year. All right. So when I was there, I said, Dr. Ann Lee, I saw an opportunity. I said, hey, when do you have your team meetings? And she said, well, I have them on Wednesdays. I said, wow, that's amazing. I said, hey, I'm an expert that speaks and I would love to come and speak to your people about, and this was during COVID, how to keep the esprit de corps up in the backdrop of COVID. I want to talk to them how they can continue to, and what was the title of the talk that I gave? It was Dash, how to celebrate your dash in the backdrop of COVID. If you never heard about celebrating your dash, please go and look it up. Look up the dash on the internet. Some of you can incorporate that in your talks. The dash, when a person dies on their grave, there are two dates: the date that they're born, the date that they're born, the date that they die. In between that is this floating dash, and that dash represents all the hopes and dreams and the things that they wish they did and they didn't do. And you could talk about that dash in the middle and what it stands for. Go in and draw inspiration if you never heard of it. And so that was an opportunity. She was like, yeah, you can come on Wednesday. She said, how much are you going to charge me? Free. Absolutely free, because you have my target audience there. I have a message for them, and I'm just going to go and shine for about 10 minutes. And when I walked away, I believe I had either 2 or 4 clients. This was years ago, 2020. So I got at least 2 or 4 clients out the deal, right? So that's an opportunity. What opportunities do you have? Schools, colleges, places you're already going to frequent. What opportunities? Those are your opportunities. And then threats. What are the threats that you have? Threats will be like omissions and errors insurance. You may need that. For example, if you speak at a school, some schools will say, I need to see proof that you have at least $1 million worth of insurance. Some will say $5 million worth of insurance. Because when you're on stage, this could be a threat. You mess around and say one thing that little Tommy or little Sue didn't like, and they go back and tell their mom, well, the school don't want to be sued because you said that, the sky is really black, which it is, by the way, and not blue. And now they went and told their mom, well, Whitney said that the sky is really black and not blue. And now the parent called and is angry and they want to sue the school. Now you're covered. That is a possible threat. So you want to make a list of threats. So you want to do your SWOT report the same way that Nehemiah did his SWOT report on the wall. Okay, let me get back to the slide here. All right, there we go. Great. All right, so he started assessing the wall, and I want you to think about what you need to assess as well. All right, what are some places that you need to, what are some areas in your life that might be a threat to your business? It may be finances. It might be relationships. It might be your health. Like, for example, you see me sitting down talking now. But one of the things that I have is I have a standing desk. So I press one button and the desk will rise so I can stand up, because I know that I do a lot of speaking standing up and I need to practice that stamina. If you are someone who consistently speaks behind a computer and you're always sitting down, you can get lazy. And don't be like me. I did that for a while. And then when COVID kind of dissipated and we were allowed to go back and speak in public spaces, when I got on stage, I was like, oh, I'm winded, because I had got coddled and I was sitting down for such a long time. And so that might be a threat for some of you guys. I want you to keep that in mind. So, all right, so this leads to the next secret. I need for you to understand the problem that you're called to solve. You do not have a business. You do not have a talk. You don't have a presentation if that presentation, if your talk, and if your business does not solve a problem. You exist to solve a problem. What is the problem that you are called to solve? I need for you to really understand that. And one of the ways for you to understand the problem that you're called to solve, especially if you feel like, well, how can I understand that I don't necessarily have money for mentors? I don't have money for coaches. I don't have clients that I can sit and go back and reevaluate. Let me show you an easy way. I know that I have shown many of you this before. If you just simply go to google.scholar.com, let's see. Here we go. School, yeah. Type that in. And what it will do is, hopefully you can see this. It'll take you to a whole bunch of peer-reviewed articles. So you can see before I was studying something about culture. But for you, you might say women in 40s, drug, and alcohol, right? And then what will happen is all of these different case studies will flood your timeline. And you can go in and you can read all these different case studies. Try to read at least 50 case studies. Now, you're going to get to learn the language that is out there. You also learn about different tools that you might want to incorporate in your practice. You might say, I'm called to help women with their recovery of alcohol and drugs, but I need some tools. I need some strategies. I don't just want to talk to them and it feels like they're just talking to their homie or to their friend. I need strategies. I need systems. I need tools. You're going to find that in these case studies. And at the same time, you get to see what other researchers, what other scientists are out there and what they're doing and what has worked, so that you can stand behind what it is that you want to do. And then you can even go in, and what I like to do is I like to go in and look up the opposite of what I'm doing, so I can go ahead and overcome the objections. I do that through the case studies as well. All right. So for example, if I felt like prayer and meditation could help heal you, and I knew that there's some doctor out there pushing a pill that they felt could help heal you, I would go in and research that doctor, so that way I can overcome objections as well. I can go ahead and get over those myths and things like that. Okay, so go to google.scholar.com, read the case studies. All right, we're nearing the end here. All right, case studies. All right, and here's the final secret I'm going to share, and we're going to save the rest for the next session. I want you to see here in Nehemiah, the 3rd chapter, right here. I mean, in the rebuilding of the wall, all of these people, look at all these families. I mean, women, priests. I mean, all of these different people came together to help build this wall. Nehemiah didn't say, I'm called to build this wall. Let me just do it myself. That's not what happened. He understood that he needed help. I need for you to understand that you need help as well. Whatever this vision is that God has called you to do, yes, he gave you the vision, but this vision requires the hands of other people. You need a team. And so as a speaker, I need for you to think about this. You are a solopreneur. But being a solopreneur does not mean that you go at it by yourself. That's not what it means. At the very minimum, I need for you to entertain hiring a virtual assistant. You can hire a virtual assistant starting at $10 an hour. That virtual assistant can do things like your copy. Now, you know how you have artificial intelligence to help you, like ChatGPT. There are all kind of artificial intelligence software out there to help you with your copy. But you still want your copy to be humanized as possible. Like, I can tell when I have AI generated copy, when I see words like beacon. Like, none of my friends speak and use the word beacon. You are a beacon of hope. Nobody speaks that way as a natural language, right? But when they send me copy and it says stuff like beacon of hope, I'd be like, this is AI generated. So that virtual assistant can help you to create more humanized, artificial intelligent generated copy, for example. So even when I use AI, I have a list of words that AI is not allowed to use. Beacon is one of those words, because I know that that's a red flag for, okay, it doesn't feel personal anymore. It feels like AI. Also, that virtual assistant can work your technology. when you start speaking, especially when you start speaking digitally, virtually, which many of you can go ahead and start speaking virtually now. You can get paid to speak virtually. You don't have to go and speak in person. You can do it right from home. That virtual assistant can work you, or you guys met my VA. She comes in sometimes and she does this stuff for me. Now she can come in, your VA can come in and work the Zoom for you. Share the screen. Like I'm about to send you into a breakout room. Your VA can do the breakout rooms, work all that stuff for you. So that way when you come in, the only thing you have to do is work on your presentation. Focus on that. The other thing that I would ask you to entertain the idea of hiring as a marketing specialist, because marketing strategies are constantly changing. And so that marketing strategy specialist can tell you, hey, listen, last month we invested $2,000 in our marketing budget. This month, I think we should invest $4,000 and use these systems, because it doesn't make sense to have a business if nobody knows you exist. That marketing specialist can float people your way. And then also get a mentor, get surrounded by wise counsel, please. A mentor, get a coach, a strategist, somebody who you respect, who has a proven track record that you can follow, who can help you in this journey. All right. So I'm going to stop here because I want to see if you guys have anything you want to add to this. Any thoughts come to mind? And then in addition, I'm going to prepare your breakout rooms. If you have any comments, insights, or questions, please raise your digital hand. To raise your digital hand, go below the toolbar and press raise hand. And then when you're done speaking, press lower hand. Anybody have any thoughts or comments? Go ahead, Vivian. Do you have any thoughts or comments? No? Okay, anybody else?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Auntie.
Um, when you're looking for, and I know you might have said this, but I just want to reiterate it. Even when you hire a marketing manager, make sure when you're looking for someone to actually understand your business.
Mm-hmm.
And that, are you responsible for replying to social media clients or people that leave comments, or are they responsible? Make sure it's very, well defined of what your responsibility is. Because when people leave you comments, you want to make sure that you respond back and it's just not a thank you or whatever. It could be an opportunity for engagement. So make sure that that person understands your business thoroughly so they can know what you offer and what you don't to your client.
I love that. Thank you, Auntie D in the house. I love that. She's absolutely right. Now, you guys have, you can hire a social media manager. And thanks again for giving me grace. I'm pushing through this virus thing as I speak to you guys. You probably can hear I'm pushing through. So thank you for the grace. You can hire a social media manager, or you can hire a social media ghostwriter. And for that ghostwriters I love, because they usually do a better job of capturing your voice. Nonetheless, last session, you guys remember we talked about the SOPs, the standard operating procedures. Well, with your SOPs, I need for you to go in and start writing down your best practices for social media. Best practices might be respond to all comments within 10 minutes. Best practice might be when you respond, ask that person a question back so it'll boost your algorithm. Best practice might be don't overuse punctuation marks. For example, if somebody ever email or text you and you see all exclamation marks across, I don't like it. So that's one of my best practices. You can't do that. Best practices might be to respond with a compassionate, spiritual, but professional voice, right? So make sure you have that listed out in your best practices. Along with it, it's a good idea to also have a social media branding kit that you can give that person with all the colors, certain buzzwords you want said, tags, all that good stuff. But your SOPs, your standard operating procedures, which as a businesswoman you should be creating, should have all that good information in it. Thank you so much, Auntie D. Anybody else got something they want to add before I send you into your breakout rooms?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead, Angelica.
Hi. So I was just thinking about the SWOT
Mm-hmm.
report, and so I was wondering like what's I guess generally the next course of action after you decipher what your threats are.
Oh, I love that. So yeah, you're gonna use that to create a plan of action. So when you draw your SWOT, and great question, Angelica. Now, when you draw your SWOT, for those of you that haven't seen it before, you're gonna draw a horizontal line and a vertical line. Over here, you're gonna put an S for all your strengths, a W, and up under that W, you're gonna put all your weaknesses. Over here, you're gonna put an O and list out all your opportunities. And in that last bottom quadrant, you're gonna write a T and list out your threats. And then remember, when you write your strengths, you're going to write out a plan on how you can leverage your strengths even more. You might say, my strengths is that I'm well connected. I'm connected with somebody who, that's like Auntie D. Auntie D has a great friend, I think a best friend, who helps her with the marketing. That's a strength, right? That is a strength to be able to text your best friend slash marketing expert anytime and get like quick, good advice right then and there. So she could leverage that even more and add that to her plan. With the weaknesses, if you figure out you have a weakness, such as a weakness not knowing how to market. There is a book I wanted to show you guys. I keep a stack of books around me. I was hoping to find it. It was called Power Words That Sell. And if I find it by the time you get back, I'll show it to you. So if my weakness, for example, is that I'm not good at marketing, I don't know how to market, I don't know how to attract customers to me. Like once they get in front of me, I can talk, but how do I get them to me? And so if that's the case, I'm going to write that as a weakness. And then I'm going to write out a way to turn that into a strength. How do I get to go from a weakness to a strength? Well, you hire a marketing expert, or you hire a social media expert or a social media ghost, like Aunt D said, right? And then you go to opportunities, you go to threats. Now, when you go to threats, I need for you to decide for your threats, who do you need? Who is the right person for it? So for example, when you're building your business, if you say, if I launch a business and I don't stand it up legally and I don't stand it up right, I don't have an EIN number, I don't file my business as an LLC or S Corp or C Corp, whatever it is, then I might get sued and my personal stuff might, they could take my personal stuff, my car, my house, my firstborn, right? So the who to help you with that might be an attorney. You might need Legal Shield. When I first started out, I used Legal Shield. You know, there was only like $20 a month. You could break it. You could break the contract. It wasn't a contract, but you could break your service with them at any time. And I liked them because you could call them and they would put you in touch with an attorney, a specialist, and that person stayed on the phone with you for hours. And you can ask them as many questions as you want for hours. And that worked out very well for me. So you could get a lot of legal advice for $20 or $30. If you feel like, okay, a threat is if somebody hired me and the only thing we did was have a talk, in the talk they said that they would pay me $1,000, but I don't have anything as far as paper, then the who or the what that I need up under that threat section is I need contracts. There are sites like Honeydew and Dubsado. I don't know if you ever heard of Dubsado, and put it in here. Dubsado, yeah, inside the chat. You can go there and they already have pre-written contracts. You can go in and manipulate those contracts and then you can use those. Yeah. Thank you, Whitney, for putting the Power Words That Sell book in there. You can use that. So once you write out your threats, I need you to figure out who is the right person to tackle that threat, or what is the right person to tackle that threat. And then also Legal Shield, they have a dashboard where you can go on with a whole bunch of contracts, from selling cars, selling furniture, to client, hire somebody to fix your roof, to client contracts with your, as a coach or a counselor as well. Does that help you, love?
That was very helpful. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome, Angelica. Any other thoughts or questions? Or if you want to pour into the subject, please go ahead.
Yeah. So the other thing you were kind of talking about hiring an assistant, I know that's something I put off for so long.
Mhm.
Not doing like Fiverr and some of those websites, you can hire some people to do specific things. Like I know you had told me you got somebody to show you how to do the Zoom controls and you recorded it. So then you knew how to do it
Yeah.
and you're learning. So I think that's kind of amazing. But one of the other things I like to do too is create your not to do list.
Ooh, I
So
like.
especially like all the things that I'm doing that I'm spending time on that may not be serving my growth. It may not be creating better income. It may not create that empowerment. It may not be aligned with God or family or your bigger future. What things do I need to eliminate and get rid of? Like, what are these not, I need to stop doing this, like going down the rabbit hole of some random fact about something else that's like not even relevant. What do I need to delegate? What can I pass on to someone else? What can I automate? Technology, there's so many amazing things. And I know you've got all kinds of systems on how to automate all these things so you don't have to do them every single time. What can you automate? And then that just kind of helps take some of that time and pressure off of you to be able to do the things you're good at and the things that magically create where you're trying to go. And that was something that it took me a while to figure out that's what I needed to do. Um, and, just like we tithe and we give back, some of that tithing is giving back to someone else's pocket, who's helping you do that. They're learning something new. So you are tithing in a way that's building their strengths up. I took on a role to learn the back end processes of insurance because they needed someone to support that. But I wanted to learn how it operated and worked so I can create my own team and I know how it works, so I know what I need to do. So sometimes you have to humble yourself and get down and gritty and learn some new things that you can kind of pass on eventually. So, I mean, it's not just like one set way in business.
Mhm.
You got to just kind of evaluate it all as a whole and keep working on that mission and learn from your mistakes.
Absolutely. That's right. That's right. Learn the lesson or the lesson will repeat itself. You said a mouthful, Whitney, and I love how you basically said, start identifying what doesn't belong on your plate. One of my philosophies is if it's been on your plate for longer than 10 days, it doesn't belong to you. If it's been on your plate for longer than 10 days, it does not belong to you. That means that you're procrastinating and you need to figure out who it belongs to. You need to delegate, like Whitney just said, you need to automate it, or you need to find a freelancer. Now, keep in mind, my loves, there are some bad apples out there, but you're not going to let that stop your show. If you hire a VA and that VA just didn't work out, that comes along with the territory. If somebody give me a Bentley right now and it get a dent in it in a month, I'm not gonna be like, I don't want this Bentley, it's got a dent in it. No, it comes along with the territory. If the alternator needs changing, I'm not gonna say I don't want this car because the alternator needs, no, no, it comes along with the territory. You will find some bad apples throughout there. Here's what I'm gonna leave you with this, and I'm gonna get you into these breakout rooms. In Galatians talks a lot about the fruit of the spirit. Fruits of the spirits include forgiveness and compassion and love and things like that. If you're never placed in a situation where someone betrays you, how can you practice forgiveness? How can you practice the fruits of the spirit? These are all opportunities, character building opportunities for you to align with the fruits of the Spirit as outlined in Galatians. So there will be some bad examples out there, but my loves, eventually you will get it right. You will get that right person for you. All right, so let's get you into these breakthrough rooms. When you get into the rooms, go ahead and please network, get to know each other, share your information. If this is your first time with us, put a 1 in the chat. Where my first timers at? First timers? And I'm going to stop the recording here for the purposes of the video replay. Remember, those of you that are watching the video replay, don't forget to subscribe and like.